grow their business. Today I've got some really great people on the panel with me. I'll do a quick round of introductions, even though the MC has already mentioned it. We've got Ganesh Kumar Bangah. Ganesh is the founder and CEO of Commerce.Asia. He's also the chairman of an Australian listed company called Netccentric. But he is famous for being one of the first really breakout startup success stories in Malaysia with MOL, which is a payments company. He was also the youngest CEO on the NASDAQ, and so he's like one of the original champions in the Malaysian ecosystem. So I thought, he had to be on this panel because I wanted you guys to meet one of the legends in our ecosystem. Interesting story was my background was I was a startup founder myself before I got into investing in VC. One of the first people I ever pitched to was Ganesh. Right, and it was on a stage, and you probably remember this, and I was super nervous speaking in front of Ganesh, and all the people were in the room at the time, but here we are, and we've been friends since then, I guess, yeah? The gentleman over there, his name is Kevin Brockland. He's not Malaysian, he's from the US, he looks so Malaysian. And he's come here because he's got a very interesting investment thesis. So he's a VC with a fund based in the US. He's obviously from the US. But his thesis is to invest in software as a service companies in Malaysia, which is something you don't hear every day, right? Of an American VC coming to Malaysia to invest in only Malaysian startups. Kevin and I go back because he was one of our first supporters at ScaleUp Malaysia when we first started in the ecosystem. And then when we did our third cohort, we also co-invested in some investments together. So very excited to have Kevin on the panel with us today. Give a round for Kevin. Also on the panel, and one of the early conversations I had with the organizing committee was, hey, we've got to get Carsome on the panel. Because Carsome is Malaysia's first and only unicorn, right? And Ravi and I go all the way back to the time where I was in AirAsia for a period. My company was acquired by AirAsia, and Ravi was the chief growth officer when I was at AirAsia. He's now gone and become the chief marketing officer at Carsome. So very exciting journey to see how a Malaysian company, which is now a unicorn, which is valued at $1 billion and above, is growing even in ASEAN and in the region. So please welcome Mr. Ravi Shankar. Okay, we have about 30 minutes on this panel before we'll go into some pitches and we'll see some young people presenting some very exciting ideas in front of all you today. I've got a slide that I want to put on the screen. If the guys in the back can just put it up, it'll be great, actually. So this is just to facilitate Q&A, right? So if any of you have questions, just take your phone out and scan that QR code. So if you want to ask questions, just scan the QR code behind me. And then it'll allow you to enter into like a little chat box and ask questions as we're going through the panel. We've got like 30 minutes, so I may not be able to do like a live Q&A by the end of it, but definitely if you do this, I'll take a look at the question and I'll ask it towards the end to questions which I think are interesting as well. All right? Okay, now that we've gotten all the start of the way, the early parts of the conversation, the topic today is about startups that innovate, build, grow, and compete. And I thought we'd break the section up into those 4 topics, right? Starting with the idea of innovation. And I think one of the things about startups is the idea that you're building something that never existed before. You're creating a payment system that didn't happen before. You're helping people buy cars in a way you've never helped them buy before. And you're enabling companies to do this. So I'll do the first question with Ganesh, right? So many consider you as like the spark of the local ecosystem, right? You started in the early 2000s. I wanted you to share maybe with the audience, like, what is your experience building ML Global and how innovation played a role in its success? Yeah.
I think when you're one of the first internet companies in the country, you don't have any choice but to innovate. So when I first started in the year 2000, actually, when I started a company called Money Online, or MOL, I actually was working before that. I was 20 years old and I was working in a cyber cafe. And then I realized when I looked at the cyber cafe that there was no management system for cyber cafes. So at that time I was still in uni, and so I actually developed a cyber cafe management software together with one of my university mates actually, right? And so we developed this cyber cafe management software, And then in the year 2000, when everybody started giving stuff away for free, Hotmail gave email for free, GeoCities gave websites for free, I decided to give this software away for free. And when we did, we went around looking for funding, and we raised 2 million ringgit actually from Tan Sri Vincent Tan of Berjaya to actually invest in the venture. So we started that and we rolled out this software, and very quickly we actually had 15,000 cyber cafes from 180 countries that actually downloaded the software. So I think the advantage at that time, why we managed to get so many cyber cafes from so many different countries, because we had no competition, right? And that's the difference between today and at that time. At that time, getting customers is difficult because not many people were on the internet. But because we focused on cyber cafes, we found it to be not difficult to get clients, so to speak. But then monetizing those clients, so once we had all these cyber cafes using it, we couldn't generate ad revenue. So the whole idea was the first screen on these cyber cafes when you walk in would actually be our website. But we found it very difficult to actually get ad revenue for that because there was no Google yet, right? And so we couldn't monetize, and that's when we decided to roll out a payment system that enabled people to pay cash in the cyber cafes for their online transactions. So we launched a new version of the software, and if our cyber cafes wanted to get that version, they had to pre-buy what we call MOL points, which was like an e-currency, an e-wallet essentially, in the year 2000. 14 years before the word e-wallet was ever coined. 14 years before the word fintech was ever coined, right? And we managed to turn that into, at one point, a payment system where you could pay for online top-ups, you could pay for online games, and there's a whole story of how we actually pivoted towards online games that actually grew in the online game industry. So I think innovation is really seizing the opportunity and really looking at the next opportunity and kind of pivoting yourself into that new opportunity to kind of seize the opportunity. And there are multiple opportunities that we actually need to cater for.
So I think, we take a lot of things for granted these days. We have such availability to make payments. I mean, I guess most of you in the room have used your phone to pay for something in the last 12 months or so, right? But back in those days, these systems did not exist. So I noticed you said that, hey, we'll make people pay cash at the cyber cafe. And later on, I guess you also branched out to other forms of payment?
Yes, so then we moved to 7-Eleven. So if you go to, people used to pay in 7-Eleven for their online games or online transactions, right? Yeah. So that's when we then branch out to more than cyber cafes.
So really interesting to see how, 14 years ago, the world...
now 22 years ago.
Yeah, I was thinking 14 is too short, right? 22 years ago. The world is such a different place, and very excited to see what you've built with MOL. I'm going to flip over to Ravi over there on the other side, right? So Carsome is operating in a very traditional space of used car dealerships, right? And I guess does everybody in the room have a car that they've bought in their life, right? And how many of you went to a car dealer to buy your car, right? How many of you bought your car online? Okay, so Carsome has built $1 billion business on buying it online, and now they've gone full circle. They started online, and now they even have places you can physically buy the cars eventually. So Ravi, maybe you can answer, how does innovation play a role in your marketing strategies at Carsome?
That's a really interesting question in terms of innovation. Basically, what I believe is fast data fuels innovation. So I just believe the right people should look at the right data, right? So we try to churn out the feedback much faster and change the business model, because this business is new and it's very different in each market. I mean, we were chest thumping that we'll give you a 5-day money back guarantee, no questions asked, which we did in Malaysia. Some guy just showed up and said, hey, my wife didn't really like the color, so I want to give it back. Okay, we take it. So, but when we go to Thailand, they expect a 14-day, right? So it's how the ecosystem is there. So for us to get these fast learnings, we need fast feedback, and we need a lot of bridges to get the data back, right? So what we had to do is we had to innovate a lot of online to offline and offline to online systems. We have a consumer app, we have a salesperson app, we have an inspector app, we enable an app for every person at every touch point and fuels data back, and then that gives us a lot more idea on what we should position and what we should sell and what will resonate with people. So, and that's just on getting the feedback, right? So in terms of the marketing strategies that we do, we build a lot of products in-house to get that done. We built an affiliate marketing model for our employees who kind of forward the links in their WhatsApp groups, and then if I see that their forward gave a sale, I pay them back via the HR. So all these products internally built fuels a lot of excitement in the employees. So, and then we build chatbots for employees or for marketeers to make sure the campaigns are launched on time. So innovation happens at taking the feedback and buying the right cars and at a marketing stage. So, but we are a new business. Like I said, I don't see any hands of people buying a car online now. So we're still learning, and then hopefully, I'll see a lot more hands in the next few years.
So Ravi, I'm old-fashioned. When I buy a car, I like to kick the tires, see what's inside, take it for a spin around the neighborhood. How does Carsome kind of address the needs of customers who feel that that's important to them, yet not losing that digital innovation component? How do you see that?
So I think it just comes with time, right? If you ask the room, hey, have you bought your shoe online 10 years ago? Everybody would have answered the same thing. Hey, I have to fit my leg in there. I have to see if it fits. How do I return it if I buy online and stuff? But the e-commerce giants came in, and then they instilled this trust of, hey, you can pay money at home and you can return it back, right? So, and then I guess Lazada came in first and gave that, behaviors, and then all the e-commerce players are tagging along because they established the behaviors. But when you're the first entrant in the market and you're the market leader, you also have that responsibility to create that trust, right? Yeah, we have people who's buying car online and completely finish the purchase online, but when it comes to pickup, they're like, oh no, I want to come and pick up my car. I don't want it to be delivered because I want this auspicious day that I want to pick up.
Yeah, because buying a car is a bit of a like a special day, right? You get to drive out of the lot, drive it back home, honk in front of the house so that your kids come out and see it. I think people still like that feeling as well.
Yeah.
I'll switch over to Kevin, and we've got a question from the floor. So guys, if you've got questions, scan the QR code, shoot your question, because I'm getting them and taking a look at them. Kevin, you've got a very interesting investment thesis whereby you're investing in B2B software as a service companies in Malaysia. What kind of investments are you looking for, and what kind of innovation specifically interests you at this point in time?
Yeah. I always get the question of why Malaysia, but I think it's very well situated in respect to the region, as well as being able to go after the international markets as well. When you look at Malaysia and you look at the composition of Malaysia, Malaysia is a relatively small population market. It's only 30 plus million people, but when you look at the dynamics of the overall region as a whole, Malaysia actually does have some good representativeness of the region as a whole. There's a lot of cultural and there's a lot of different dynamics at play, but we focus specifically on the B2B segment. And so when you're talking about the B2B segments, I think that becomes much more representative of what's around in Southeast Asia, as well as what we see in different parts of the globe. Relative to the region, most people kind of have Singapore pop up into their head because it's kind of has that cachet of the capital of the region. It's very well known. But as a sheer number basis, there's more multinational corporations that are domiciled in Malaysia, operating in Malaysia, that have footprints throughout Southeast Asia. So based upon that, we can look at it and say, okay, well, Malaysia plays a very solid role as an entry point in order to attack some of these other regional markets. There's a lot of characteristics of Malaysia that enable those entry points, the infrastructure, the education level, the access to tech, all of these different characteristics provide that sort of layer. So that's the kind of the why look at Malaysia in short. As far as the innovations, you know, when we're looking at potential companies that are coming out of here, you know, a lot of them play out the same list of what you may see in a lot of varieties of areas. These days, because of ChatGPT 3, everyone is talking about AI technology, generative AI, all of these different sorts of areas. Where we're trying to look at based upon the status of the businesses that are operating within the region, how can we enable further digitization so we're enabling more efficiency? Ultimately, we're only going to be able to sell products to the market if we're either increasing their revenue or we're decreasing their costs. If we're not providing one of these sorts of values, then we don't have a viable business. And we need to do it with technology that enables us to scale that, repeat that, and continue to deploy over and over and over again. And so there's not really one small segment, but we see a lot of opportunity across areas like sales, across HR, across the cloud server systems. But we see a lot of different innovations that are coming through Malaysia, and I think it's a destination that is unfortunately overlooked, even though it has very solid operating dynamics.
So I'm going to push back a little bit. So why do you think Malaysian founders have the capacity to compete on a global basis? Like, what is it about Malaysian founders that, in your thesis?
Yeah. So, you know, it's tough to answer that without potentially causing hurt feelings with some of the neighboring countries. But I'm going to try and attempt to be diplomatic in my response of why I think the Malaysian founders are quite good.
They won't tell Singapore, it's okay.
When you look at Malaysia oftentimes ends up complaining about like things like brain drain and these sort of characteristics, which is true. There's a lot of very bright individuals in Malaysia that end up leaving for other markets. But so do other countries. It's not unique to Malaysia. We should actually look at it and be quite proud of the fact that we have large numbers of Malaysians that can go to Singapore, go to Australia, go to the US, go to the UK, and go to these other international markets and succeed at the very highest of levels. Where we need to change is we need to enable more of the domestic market so that those same talents survive and thrive and create value domestically in Malaysia. There's a certain resiliency of the Malaysian in general, where if I'm looking at some of these MNCs that I referenced earlier, a lot of times the MNCs will come into a market and the people that are showing strong promise, they want to put them on rotations and pass them around through a few different markets. If you did that with some of the citizens of some of the neighboring markets, they're not as resilient to the change maybe it's because of the cultural differences in Malaysia. There's a variety of it. There's some sort of inherent characteristic that enables them to survive and thrive in other markets. Now, from a startup standpoint, when you compare the startups that are coming out of Malaysia, from a unit economics, most of other countries are at this like grow at all costs sort of mentality where I'm just going to throw a lot of money at it and I hopefully buy my way to profitability. That is not the Malaysian founder. The Malaysian founder is generally very solid on profitability first, growth number two. If I get my business model in order first, then I can end up fueling the growth. So it's more of a responsible growth as opposed to irresponsible growth. And I think those two characteristics are what separate.
Thanks for that. It's a really good answer, and you did a really good job. You didn't get in trouble. Nobody report him, okay? He behaved today. So I've got a ton of questions coming in from the floor, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to skip all the questions that we prepared earlier. And if you want to get that, we can do another conference on another day. But I think the first question I have to ask is actually a question targeted at Ravi, right? But I'm going to mix it up a little bit because I think I'd like to get the other guys to chime in as well. So the question for Ravi was, where did it go? Why would you need to set up a showroom when the initial business model was to be online, right? And what's the logic around that? And I'm going to start with Ganesh first with an answer, right? Do you feel, because back in the day, technology firms was the geeks on this side and the rest of the business world on this side. Do you feel that it's now blurring? that there's actually no difference. Like if you want to build any business, you need a digital strategy. And if you want to be a digital business, you have to have business fundamentals at the same time. And I know this is close to your heart, so.
Yeah, I think for sure, especially because of the pandemic, right? After the pandemic, what happened was every offline business actually became an online business as well. Every retail out there, give you an example, for example, let's say a Malaysian retailer, Bonia, for example. Bonia, who has got many physical outlets, suddenly set up an online store and became, well, I won't say suddenly started focusing on their online store. And their online store actually became a significant amount of their business. And then what people realized is for an online store to succeed, having an offline store actually helped, right? So why is that? Because when you're actually doing advertising online, the chances of somebody clicking on an ad is actually higher if there's already mind share, if the person actually trusts the brand, already knows the brand, right? So today, if you're selling online and don't have an offline store, you're actually going to lose out against the guys who are selling offline who now have an online store because they actually have a better return on ad spend. So the return on ad spends, the cost of them doing online marketing or performance marketing actually be better. So the line has not only blurred, but has become so that if you're today selling online and you don't have an offline store, but your competitor has an offline store, tendency is the competitor with the offline store will do better. And that's the issue. The issue today is that makes it's easy for an offline store really to set up an online store. It's very easy. But it's not easy for an online store to set up an offline chain. It's more difficult. Am I making sense?
Yeah, that's excellent. And so Kevin, like just to build on that, sorry Ravi, I'm just going to tease you out a little bit longer. So just to build on that, like as a VC and somebody looking at startups, is it now the case that when you talk to a company, do you want to hear this from them as well? That you're not just thinking with blinkers on digital all the way, but you want to have a holistic approach to go to market and a holistic approach to how they will kind of grow their business. Is this something that's important to you as an investor?
I think so. I mean, we're no longer in any sort of dichotomy of online versus offline, but essentially it's become one single universe. And so when you look at the to kind of follow on what Ganesh was saying, when you look at some of the traditional businesses, they kind of got forced into moving online. And a lot of the transition towards online ends up coming with a lot of different demands related to being able to operate and facilitate, because there's a different speed and scale that's required in order to accommodate the nature of online businesses. And so what we've seen is that requires a lot of additional tools. Not that it becomes overly complicated, but there's a number of different enablers that get plugged into the operations of your business so that you can do so with efficiency, with ease. There's a lot of low code, no code. There's a lot of different enterprise software solutions that have now enabled companies to realize the blurring of those lines without the headaches as it was before. And a lot of what's happened is historically there's been a psychological barrier to adopting a lot of this. And now because of the things like the pandemic, the lockdown, all of these different sorts of external factors, now everyone's overcome that initial barrier. Now those lines are blurring at a much faster pace. Now companies across the globe are adopting new software solutions at a faster pace. Now those companies are being staffed by digital natives who their first experience with technology was the mobile phone that's in their pocket. There's a lot of these different characteristics. So when we're looking at investments, we're looking at companies that understand that all of this has now been integrated from top to bottom, from left to right, throughout the consumer life, throughout the enterprise life. And there's no longer any, you're either in or you're off.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. So now, Ravi, since we've set up the answers for you already, so the actual original question was, and this is how it's written, why would Ravi set up a showroom when the initial business model was to go online? Don't people want to feel the car before they buy one? So I think we've heard, the two gentlemen talk about the importance of omnichannel. Tell us your philosophy. How do you see this, and how do the two business models kind of feed into each other to build one strong business?
Yeah, certainly. So Carsome's business model was, or vision initially is to bring trust to this ecosystem, right? The used car ecosystem, which is extremely untrustworthy, right? So you wouldn't trust a used car dealer, right? And again, that is one of the reasons we wanted to go omni-channel. You can now buy a car online completely, but there are a lot of people out there who wants to see the car, who want to test drive the car, who wants to feel the car, and before buying it, right? And setting up a showroom is important because we want to house as much as inventory as we can for people who wants to come there and have a choice of it, right? So for the typical dealer, you can actually, see 4 to 5 cars, but you can actually come to our auto mall in PJ and see up to 200 cars with a wide variety of it, right? So we want to give that choice. And we want to give a best customer experience and give that joy of buying a car as well, right? So typically reason they buy a new car is that they get excited, they take pictures when they're getting the car delivered, right? They take videos and celebrate it, right? But you don't get to do that when you're buying a used car. But we want to give that experience to the users as well. So it's customer experience, bringing the trust and everything into the ecosystem, right? That's one of the reasons we set up the showroom in the first place.
Okay, Ravi, since we're on this question, how many % of the sales now comes, or your sales now comes offline in the showroom versus online?
About 50%.
Is offline.
Yeah, 50%.
Wow.
And because most of the inventory that is available here in KL is in demand in tier 2, tier 3 cities. People wants to buy, people in Johor or Penang wants to buy cars in KL, so they typically tend to buy it online. But people here, they have the convenience, they just go and walk around and inspect the car. And also in the showroom that we have car inspection as well. If you want to sell your car, you drive your car, we inspect, we evaluate, and we pay you there.
So you're saying like ultimately what happens is you have a full service as a part of it. So it's no longer just a website or an app, it's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it's the ecosystem.
So if you actually walk into the outlet, which part of that process is digitized, or is it just really a normal process today?
You don't need to walk into the showroom in the first place. You can buy the car online when we deliver it to your home, just like an e-commerce product.
But if you walk into the showroom, which part of that is digital, or is it?
Everything is digital. There is no cash transaction. You have to pay online, and then all the ownership transfers, everything is done online.
So okay, I'm sorry because we're actually running out of a little bit of time right now. And I'm sorry to all those of you who wrote questions. I try to get to as many of those as possible. I'll end with one, right? And I just thought we'll do like the final round. We'll start with you, Ravi, this time. Just on the idea of startups, right? Because startups get a bad reputation these days as being a little too aggressive with spending of money. We hear all these horror stories out there. And I know we were talking just now in the holding room about how it's really about pursuing the right business models, finding the ones that really make sense. How do you view the idea of sustainability, building a business that's made to last, and how important is that within Carsome as the first unicorn in Malaysia? And then, Kevin, maybe you can add your context after that, right? So we'll start with Ravi, and then we'll go to Kevin, and then Ganesh, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
I mean, to start with, our business was always, our business model was always to be sustainable. Right, because we are in the phase of setting up businesses, our Carsome certified lab, the refurbishment centers. We are opening these experience centers, and we are putting our brand out there. That seems like we spend a lot there, but we're just actually setting up business. And these are huge operations. We have logistics, we have inventory, we have about 4,500 people across all 3 countries working on this product, right? So it seems like we want to set it up as fast as we can. That seems like, we are growing faster, we are aggressive, but we have a very clear plan and a good path to profitability in place.
Cool. Kevin, maybe you can share a little bit about your views on startups and how important, especially in the current macroeconomic climate, right, where maybe capital is not so free and easy these days. How should startups approach this? How should they look at building a sustainable company?
Yeah. I think sustainability has become much more into the current parlance than it was previously. I think it's important to understand that when you're building a startup and you're going from, say, the 0 to 100 customers, you have to spend a lot of money before you can actually go out into the market. So inevitably, there is an aspect to where at the initial stages, it may not necessarily, you are going to have to burn some cash in order to do it, but it's not drastically different than if I build a manufacturing plant. It's a lot of upfront costs, and then there's a certain amount of units that I need to sell in order to recoup my cost. What's going on right now is historically there's always been this, my break-even point is some point into the future, and then it just gets extended and extended and extended, and I can always raise more money in order to continue the path towards trying to find it. But nowadays, what's happened is that the bubble is kind of burst on that. So you saw the public markets drop, and as you start trickling down, the later stage startups ended up seeing their valuations drop. The stage before that ended up seeing their valuations drop. So now we're in a little bit more of a capital constrained environment, so we can't just kind of grow at all costs. We need to be able to look at the solid unit economics. And what that means is that every sale needs to have a marginal profitability to it. I cannot make sales anymore, as has happened in the past with a lot of other startups historically, where I lose money with the hope of getting a hook around a customer in the long run. We need to make money from the beginning and be able to have that sustainability, because if you can't get that fundamental correct, then the business in the long term is just going to end up failing.
Cool. Ganesh, one of the things that we've always talked about, and a lot of the conversations we have is about how companies should not burn at all costs. You've always had a fundamental belief that the business needs to be, have good economics and be profitable at the core. Maybe speak about that, and you've invested in so many companies over the last couple of years. So
every company I invest in, we can understand when you invest in a company and they need to spend some capital, for example, to hire people, to build a product, it takes time for you to roll out a product, you need money for marketing, we can understand that. But generally, every company should at least have a mindset of trying to break even within 12 to 18 months. Even more so if you're a technology company, because technically if you're a technology company, your costs may be even lower than a physical company, right? So I do not believe in the mindset of some startups out there, at least a couple of years ago, now it's changed, where it's growth at all costs. 3-4 years ago during the pandemic, if you ask some startup founders, when are you going to become profitable? The response you get from some of them really is, I'm a startup, why do I need to become profitable? My response will be, you're running a business, not a NGO. Right? So every company is a business. Every business needs to have mindset that we're actually starting a business to make money. And that's why I believe in the motto of sustainable growth. You need to be able to make money. It's okay if you use some of that money to start new businesses, to plow back into other businesses, to plow back into marketing, that's fine. But the mindset is whatever I plow back needs to be able to also break even or make money within a certain time frame, right? And it really goes down to the mindset. Now, what happened a couple of years ago because of the market condition, because of free money going on, it's actually the investors at fault. It's the investors that actually told startups, actually told entrepreneurs, investors like SoftBank, grow at all costs. It's okay. Just grow your revenue. It doesn't matter if you lose money, then you can raise more money at the next round, etc. It's the investors who so to speak, spoiled the companies. And guess what? The same investors this year, or rather last year, are telling the startups, now you got to make money, because now money is not so easy, you got to make money. And let me tell you this, to go from a business where you're growing at all costs to going to running a business where you need to make money overnight is not easy. It involves retrenchments, it involves getting rid of people, and that can have very negative effect on the company. So I would strongly suggest that in good times or bad times, every entrepreneur needs to have a mindset of at least being able to make money over time.
All right, thanks, guys. The bell apparently means our time is up. But if you want to talk to any of the guys here, we'll be available. I mean, some of them have to run, but please talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to hear about startups in Malaysia, please talk to any one of us. If you want to maybe introduce companies to us, we'd love to talk to you as well. And if you'd like to partner with them, we'd be happy to do so. So for Ravi, for Kevin, for Ganesh, for myself, you've been excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen.